So now you have this picture of Tomas Pinpin. And who is Tomas Pinpin? He was the first printer, first Filipino printer. And this is just a monument of Tomas Pinpin located in Bataan. Okay. Tomas Pinpin was a Filipino who was then working for the Dominican press. And in 1610, he published the book Librong Pag-aaralan ng mga Tagalog ng Wikang Kastila, meaning the book that the Tagalog should use in learning Spanish. So, what is interesting with Tomas Pinpin was that in the first chapter of the book, he advises fellow Filipinos to study Spanish orthography first. Okay, now, and this is from Pinpin, and he was writing in 1610. And Virgilio Almario studied him in 1993, and I'm now quoting Pinpin found in Almario. Okay, according to Pinpin, hindi magaling na ituloy ko, and as you can see, look at the C's in there, which at that time was used instead of K, okay? Itong aral kong ito, kundi ko muna kayo aralan, mga kapwa ko Tagalog, nang di pagturing ng ibang mga letrang na di natin tinotoran-torang dati ang wala nga sa wika nating Tagalog. So what is he saying? He's saying, it would not be wise that I continue this lesson if you, my fellow Tagalog, do not study the words that we do not know, that we do not have in Tagalog. Okay, so he's trying to encourage them to study Spanish and Spanish orthography. Okay. So here are the notes from Virgilio Almario, and that's just a photo of Virgilio Almario, not Pinpin. So Pinpin explained the differences between P and F, I and E, and O and U. So you will remember that in the Baybayin symbols, I and E only had one symbol, and O and U also had one symbol. Now, what is Almario saying? Or what was Almario saying? Almario said that 4 centuries later, many Filipinos still find it difficult to distinguish the F from the P sound. So, he also says that the name Nena in Bulacan becomes Nina in Cebu. And people are not bothered by that. So, you see the word Nena, you pronounce it Nina. So, doesn't matter. Okay. So, and this is from Pinpin. It's about grasping the Spanish orthography. Ay, ang lubhan niyong napagkamalan ay ang I at ang E. Sampon ng O at ng U at sa. Pagsulat man at sa pangungusap. Now look at this F. It's very confusing because you see an F letter, and that's supposed to be an S. Man ay inyong pinagpalit ng maralas. At siya ding ikinalalayong lubha ng pangungusap nyo ng wikang Kastila sa totoong katwiran. So what is he saying? You usually make a mistake in using I and E and also O and U, both in writing and speaking. You interchange these, and thus you make your speech far from the Spanish language. And that is the reason, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So all he's saying is that it's kind of agreeing with the Spaniards at this point. And he's saying that what Filipinos should do is they should try to study the Spanish orthography because it's very different from the indigenous orthography, the Baybayin, that the Filipinos had. Okay. Now, 200 years later, okay, we now go to a text written in 1864. And at this point, we're looking at this text called Urbana at Felisa. And at this time, Tagalog texts already show a familiarity with Spanish orthography. And this is, again, Letters Between Two Young Women, Urbana and Felisa, that teach fine manners by Modesto de Castro. Okay. So this is the kind of like a reprint of this text, Urbana at Felisa. And what this is, Romilo Bakiran, in this book, what he does is the original is maybe at the left side, and the new text as written in contemporary orthography is done by Bakiran. Okay. So this is from Modesto de Castro. Okay? Paunawa sa babasa. Kayo mga binata ang inaalayan ko nitong munting bunga ng pagod. Kayo ang aking tinutungo at ipinamamanhik sa inyo na ako ay pagdalitaang dinggin. Note to the reader. It is you, young men, that I offer this humble fruit of my labor. You are the ones I address, and I ask you to hear me out. Now, obviously, if we were to do a feminist analysis of Modesto de Casas Urbana at Felisa, we could obviously point out that he's saying that note to the reader, but what he's actually saying is, well, I'm addressing this to young men because obviously only young men will read this and the women will not read this because women are not supposed to be reading at this time anyway. So that was his framework. And going back to, I just want to say something a little bit about Urbana at Felisa because I believe that some of you may be curious as to what this book is about, and I just wanted to point out that so this book is a book of manners and would say some things like how women should act and how men and women should interact and what are things you should do if you're at the dinner table and so on and so forth. So for example, the book says things like women should not look out the window. Why? Because if they look out the window, they seem like a bunch of grapes and they're kind of like advertising themselves to be picked by men, and therefore, and women should not be walking in the streets alone. So what it is it's a text that you can read as part of the texts that supported or texts that kind of strengthened the feudal characteristic of Philippine society. So and correct it one of the characteristics of this feudal system was that women were considered as property of men. So that's just a little bit about Urbana and Felisa, and I hope you have the time to read the book.